But we watched it, and our colonel came out and took a look at it. He made a phone call. Pretty soon, 4 F-86D model Sabre jets came out, and they tried to get to the object. And it appeared that they hit some barrier that you couldn't see, because they would stall out and do a 1.5 turn spin and then pull out at the bottom. Flying saucer finally decided to leave and got very, very bright. And it was pretty difficult to look directly at it. But it rose straight up and it went through the overcast. Now, when it went through the overcast, there were 3 black rings that radiated from the flange of the craft and went from the flange of the craft all the way over the horizon with no sound at all. And what it looked like was somebody dropping a pebble in a glassy pool of water, and the rings were spreading out.
In January of 05, 5:24 in the evening, I was driving south on Interstate 25, south of Denver, and I see this black object coming up the road, above the road, in the sky. And I thought, that's curious, what is that? As I get close, as we close, I see that it is a solid object. I thought it might have been Canadian geese for a start. I thought it might have been a piece of plastic blown up in the breeze like a kite. But I could see it was a solid object. It was not affected by a breeze in any way. It was flying on a straight course. It looked black. It may have been some color, but because it was silhouetted against the sky, it looked very dark. It looked like a plank. It looked like a board, an oblong shape. It was bizarre. It had a couple of little bumps on the leading edge on one end. And I thought, well, if it's just junk, that would be random, perhaps. It certainly wouldn't be symmetrical. And I looked out the other side, and sure enough, it had the identical bumps on the other side of the leading edge. So it was an anomalous object. Could I identify it? Heck no. I couldn't relate to it. It had no sweep back, no anhedral, no dihedral. Didn't have any external power plants, no wings or no tail, empennage, flight control surfaces or probes.
A search of the term Fastwalkers on the internet immediately reveals references that Fastwalker is a code name used by various government agencies to refer to UFOs, or, as they are sometimes called, non-referenced targets.
Okay, that's holding pretty well. Craft that I recorded that did the 180-degree turn down on this portion of the screen, they're called Fastwalkers because of their speed. The whole episode took about half a second to perform or less. You're talking milliseconds. And that kind of lets you know that it's not an Earth satellite that we're looking at because it's moving so fast. Plus the fact our satellites don't change direction 180 degrees without changing speed, or 90 degrees. And I have seen many of the shadows go up and do a 90 degree right across the screen. And sometimes you'll see 3 or 4 objects in formation, looks like formation flying, and one will branch off to the left and one will go to the right. Somebody coined the phrase fast walker, and it's appropriate.
The fast walkers are these very rapid moving electrogravitic and anti-gravity discs and craft of various shapes. The National Security Agency actually for a long time had called these ETVs, extraterrestrial vehicles. And from the military who have tracked these objects, and they've been called fast walkers because, as opposed to slow walkers, which are satellites, because they move at enormous speeds. For example, they've been tracked at going tens of thousands of miles per hour in the atmosphere and make a right-hand turn without decelerating. Well, you can't do that with a conventional system. You have to correct for gravity and mass inertia. That's what these things are doing. So these have been tracked on dedicated and classified radar systems. Occasionally, people who are on an ordinary system will pick them up.
Today, the internet is literally alive with websites that are filled with detailed reports, many of which include convincing videos and pictures of unknown crafts and alien-like creatures.
I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I am a sky watcher, UFO hunter. I have a website called seeingufos.com. I had an interest in UFOs my whole life, but officially got started on April 15th of 2004 when I walked my dog in the middle of the night, looked up in the sky and saw some strange lights. I've got over 200 UFO video clips on my website. I'm more interested in the day footage. Now, the day footage is completely different because that's harder to dismiss, you know, so I would have to say every other month it seems like I'm catching something. And I go out every day, pretty much 6 days a week, a couple hours a day. You know, you add all those hours up and that's a lot of time just to catch one thing for 20 seconds. But that's more than most people see in a lifetime, so I think that's better than nothing.
Well, I'm involved in the political resolution of the what we now call, I prefer to call the truth embargo that the government imposed on the facts regarding an extraterrestrial presence. That presence has been established, I think, many times over by the citizen science research that's been going on since the 40s. The government did studies, but they were primarily for show. And the issue, from a government standpoint, has been managed very intensely since '47, at minimum. Managed in the sense that the government was going to deal with it, but deal with it within the national security structure and never acknowledge that there's anything to this. But in fact there is. I mean, we are being engaged as a planet and as a species by other beings, possibly multiple species. This has just been proven beyond any doubt at all. Anyone who reads the research who isn't compromised by being either an idiot or in the employ of the government management of the issue can only arrive at one conclusion. The evidence is overwhelming. Videotape, daylight discs, nighttime discs, photographs, direct pilot sightings by the thousands, millions of sightings around the world, direct testimony from direct government involvement, and of course you've got an entire contactee body of evidence that's now in the tens of thousands of reports.
Now, like never before, astounding events are transcending national and geographical boundaries, currently happening in Brazil and Mexico. Unprecedented UFO sightings are sweeping the entire area of South and Central America. Does the key to understanding UFOs and aliens and their relationship with each of us lay in being able to simply perceive what is in a higher spectrum, like seeing the infrared range or other dimensional frequencies? Images gathered from infrared cameras in Mexico and the special cameras used in Brazil seem to indicate that the aliens and their crafts may in fact be all around us. Jaime Maussan is one of Mexico's foremost journalists. Internationally known and respected for more than 3 decades of journalistic work, his investigations and reporting in the UFO field have made him an icon to UFO researchers worldwide. Jaime's weekly network television show, 60 Minutes, in Mexico reaches millions of people each week and regularly carries segments on the subject of UFOs.
This flap has been recorded in video. It means that we have evidence to prove that something is really happening.
On a planet, the local planet here in our system, it was Jupiter, and the whole planet just radiated with the energy. And I spent time there with these incredible people or beings, and I got a glimpse of mankind's destiny or future as it was possible.
And as we approached the window, I closed my eyes. And as I did, I felt this stickiness. It was a stickiness and a feeling of something being pulled very slowly across my face. It wasn't painful, it was just very, very weird. I opened my eyes because I felt cold, I felt wind on my face, and I was aware that I was now floating outside of the window, 3 stories up, looking down at the car park with a very bright light above my head. I couldn't really see what was above my head. I was just aware of this very bright light. 1 little grey on each elbow. I was aware of them, and we floated up into the craft.
And people have said, well, then you were abducted, and I said, no, I went very willingly. And they've also asked, how can you tell if you were to meet an extraterrestrial? And I would have to say the energy field, because when they're in your presence, they absolutely resonate at a frequency that's so much higher, and it can only be described as, dealing with them could be described as ecstasy.
I had been taken in the middle of the night while I was asleep
And I was asleep through the whole thing until all of a sudden I felt some pressure going up my nose. And it startled me so much that I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I saw this large-headed being with gray skin, large black eyes, and small other features that was looking down at me. And he had long fingers that he was using to hold this instrument that he was using to shove up my nose.
I feel knowledge is power. And someday, maybe next week, maybe tomorrow, maybe 5 years from now, we're going to get all of the proof we need that somebody exists. Hey, an ET might show up and I might actually get an interview. The point is that the more we know about this subject, then less legend can take over. If you see a craft hanging near you, don't get out of the car, don't stop the car, don't see what's happening. If you see one coming towards you, you don't have to be an abductee if you don't want to be. They go away, evidently. We have tens and tens of people telling us, said, I don't want to do that anymore, and they let them go.
What we call abductions, or certain categories of abductions, took place as a result of an authorized genetic upgrade of the human race, trying to get us out of our warlike ways and ecologically ecocidal ways.
The indigenous reptilians seem to have a very strong interest in the biosphere of Earth being stable, that it's not jeopardized unduly, and some who have kind of analyzed what the reptilians have been doing or had some kind of interaction believe that this is because the reptilians view humanity as a resource and they don't want that resource to damage itself or damage the biosphere.
They had about 18 scientists that all had been working on the project, various stages of the project, gathered around a big oval table in the Los Alamos headquarters with Edward Teller, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, sitting at the head of the table. One of the aliens on the opposite side of the table from my engineering friend put in a white shirt and slacks so he would look less alien, but he still had his alien bigger head, bigger eyes, black eyes. And he was sitting in the conference, and the only people that he could understand everybody else because he was telepathic. And the only way he could communicate, though, was with the signs that he had developed with my engineer friend to answer the question. But here's a man, an alien from another planet, sitting in a conference in 1968 in Los Alamos headquarters on the progress of learning how to bridge the gap between the alien technology and ours.
They were going to suggest to the American generals additional technology exchange projects, and I think they were using me as the test guinea pig to take me on board the scout craft, and then they could test my reaction to what I was impressed with and what I wasn't with.
My life changed and I was never ever quite the same. So the study itself was not as complete as it could have been. They concluded what they wanted to conclude. One, there was not a threat involved. Two, they weren't the Soviets. Three, the evidence was overwhelming. They were extraterrestrial. Four, there were 4 groups involved. 4 different groups. And they were all humanoid, but they were not human. Only one of the 4 was what we considered to be human. One group out of the 4 looked so much like us. I mean, almost identical to us. They could have put on these guys could have put on a suit and tie. And for the females, because we encountered some of them as well, they could have put on a dress, suit and tie, coat, jacket, sit down with you, next to you in a restaurant, sit next to you in a theater. You'd never know.
Sono persone come noi, che hanno un corpo come noi.
That have a body like ours.
In questi UFO,
And these extraterrestrial
che io prendo poi quando parlo,
vehicles,
lo prendo in senso largo, cioè anche delle persone che o sono dentro
he says, I'm using this in a large sense. Or the people are inside the craft.
Oh, ma questo è molto molto difficile pensarlo. Oppure comandano, ma sono distanze enormi. Se si fanno vedere da noi, Mica c'è un pianeta che è a 1000 chilometri da noi, se no a 1000 chilometri ci
It's
sarebbero
very
già
difficult,
arrivati.
but they make themselves seen and known to people on Earth.
Quindi è molto ragionevole che siano dentro.
So it's probably logical that they're inside a craft instead of coming from somewhere else without a craft.
E quindi sono persone come noi, composte di una parte spirituale, che la chiamiamo anima. Gli UFO, io non ho mai parlato con un UFO e non ho avuto...
He says they would have to have a soul like we
ma che
do.
abbiano anche un corpo, devono averlo un corpo.
They'd have to have some kind of
E
body.
se no sarebbero angeli.
Otherwise they would be angels.
How can countries, one of which actually borders with the United States, be having UFO visitations by the hundreds when other major nations of our world insist that they are not? And even more importantly, how can these countries' governmental policies, both official and otherwise, be that they never have had UFO or alien contact? The only logical explanation is in fact that governments are willing to lie.
For the past 9 years, I've been researching into the United States government files on what they have on the UFO phenomenon and all sorts of different conspiracies. And I've reached 183,000 pages of government documents on the internet.
There is a political block, what I call a truth embargo, instituted by the government, that they are not ready to formally acknowledge this, quote, presence.
Anything that involved absolute proof, like hardware and bodies, was siphoned off completely into another track.
They just can't allow information to come out overnight so people would be perturbed and actually demand that something be done about it. They stonewall it, deny it, lie about it for, 30, 40 years, and then finally just announce it as if it's fact, and everybody goes, yeah, okay.
It's clear we're dealing with a cosmic Watergate, meaning some few people within major governments have known since at least July 1947, when 2 crashed flying saucers and several alien bodies were recovered in New Mexico, that indeed some UFOs are alien space.
In the Mexican Republic, the video camera had become the most important instrument to really capture this new reality. Even the Mexican Army, the Air Force in Mexico, recorded UFOs. That the video was given to me, and I released that to the world. In that case, that happened on March the 5th, 2004. The soldiers were able to record something that they couldn't see with their own eyes. And that's amazing. That was the first time someone recorded something that they weren't able to see.
With Jaime Maussan aboard a plane coming from San Antonio to Mexico City, flying over a place called San Luis Potosí to film a UFO following the plane. It was detected by the radars, and I have everything on film. So for us it's normal. Maybe because we're searching for it, maybe because we are trying to look for this reality, maybe they are following us. I don't know, but it happened to me that at least 50 times, maybe more.
There are objects that we cannot see with our own eyes, but they are there, they are watching us. In the last months in Mexico, after thousands of videos, we have been registering some of the most spectacular videos. You can see hundreds and hundreds of objects making formations and flying together, exactly the same thing that you can see in the military video. These formations moving at the same speed, in the same direction, at the same altitude.
As the more one researches, the more one discovers that literally tens of thousands of very credible people of every age, occupation and nationality are claiming that they have had personal contact with either aliens or interdimensional beings.
Credible researchers now say that as many as 60 different species of intelligent, superconscious beings have been interacting with humanity for millions of years.
Physically, They're humanoid. Their skin is as white as a piece of paper. Throughout much of their adult life, they're the same height that I am, 5'11", 6 feet tall. Their eyes are perhaps twice as large as ours. They're typically blue eyes with white pupils, although when they get older, especially the men, their eyes take on a pink shade. Their eyes stretch further around the sides of their head than human eyes do, and their ears and their nose are only about half the size of human ears and noses, and their ears lay back along the side of their head more than a human does. Their lips are not as prominent as humans, and they don't have teeth, they just have ridges, because they're plant eaters, they don't eat meat.
How can we know for sure exactly how many extraterrestrial races are visiting us or interacting with humanity? I mean, there are different sources disclosing some of that information. I found none the most credible to be whistleblowers, people who have worked in these various secret projects, who in some way have kind of been given information that gives them an idea of exactly how many races are here. One of those sources is a sergeant who worked for 22 years in the Air Force, Clifford Stone, and he was involved in these top secret projects that involved the retrieval of crashed discs. And in that process, he was able to get quite a bit of information on how many extraterrestrial races are visiting us. And he came up with the figure of 57. Others have come up with slightly more. Another prominent whistleblower or a former employee of the CIA is John Lear, and he talks about over 60 races that are visiting the Earth.
On one night, I saw between 200 and 300 different tall white individuals. There were so many I couldn't count them, lined up along the mountains to the east of, up along where the ammunition bunker was. On the night that the tall white lady known as Pamela was supposed to finish her final exam to be head of the technology transfer team to go into Livermore. In amongst those 200 or 300 tall whites, and that's just an estimate because I couldn't, it was a crowd of people and I couldn't count them all. There were also American Air Force personnel, nobody below the rank of colonel. There was like a 4-star general, a 3-star general. There were several of them. There were also several American government people in civilian clothing over there.
Could it be possible that our universe is not only immense, but that it is full of life, and that there is a great diversity of this life spread throughout our own local galaxy and even our solar system? Equally outstanding is the recent revelation by the government of Brazil of their intent to turn over the official UFO files dating back to as early as 1954 to the people of Brazil.
Well, the Virginia case is probably the best well-documented case that we have in Brazil and probably in the world. Yeah, you know that over 80 witnesses came forward, first-hand witnesses came forward during the first weeks, and they are still coming after it happened. During all these years, we still keep getting witnesses that come forward and tell us pieces of the big story that we know that comprises the capture of at least 2 alien creatures in the city of Virginia. We know for a fact, because we have it all documented, plus the witnesses have confirmed and cross-confirmed that one alien was captured in the morning of that day, which was a Saturday, about 10:30, by a fire department and some personnel from the Army. Another creature was seen at the same day by middle afternoon by 3 girls. It was them who called attention of all the city to the fact that strange creatures have been seen, because when the first one was seen and captured in the morning, it didn't draw too much attention. But at the afternoon, when the girls saw another creature and then spread the word to everybody, we saw the devil, that's what they thought they saw. That night of the Saturday, January 20, 1996, that second creature, probably the same one saw by the girls, was also captured by a police troop, a police car, actually a military police car with 2 policemen inside. The one who was sitting in the passenger seat was Marco Elisceresi, and he was lucky enough to be the one who spotted the creature and grabbed it with his own bare arms, bare hands, got back to the car, put the creature in his lap, and took to the hospital. 25 days after that, he died on February 15 of some bacteria attacks, proving that his immunodeficiency system was absolutely destroyed. And army personnel and authorities kept it all secret for lots of time until the UFO researchers started protesting along with the press, and we did so much pressure that eventually information was released about it.
The exobiological aspect, that the probability of life out there has actually increased over what it was in 1950. And the indication that there may be ways of traveling faster than the speed of light so that, hey, they can get here from there. Doesn't mean that they're coming in 5 minutes or they're coming every hour or every day, but you know, they might be able to traverse huge distances in a period of weeks or months or something instead of spending hundreds or thousands of years. Well, look at the UFO sightings. Maybe they provide the answer that they are here.
That exist with inhabitants that would be giving glory to God. It is not just us.
If I told you that you know, the very nature of the moon and Mars and most of the planets in the solar system is being kept from you for specific reasons, to make you think that you're completely alone and that these planets can't be colonized.
Back in the 50s, the big question was, do they come from Mars or do they come from Venus? And by the 60s and 70s, we had gotten a little more sophisticated in our intellect and our thinking, and the question became, well, do they come from Alpha Centauri or Zeta Reticuli 4, you know? Well, and then now we're up to today, and we've got even more sophisticated, and now the question is, do they come from another planet, or do they come from another dimension? Or are they perhaps time travelers? Do they come from another time, okay? And in my study of all of this, I have kind of come to the conclusion that the answer is yes.
The more you know about this field, it becomes almost paralyzing, because the more you know, the less you know. The more you know and the more open-minded you are about this, the more you realize that that every answer you find just leads to a 1,000 more questions.
Vast sums of money are being siphoned through these different agencies into the coffers of the CIA, which then forwards this money on to the DOD, and this money is funneled through the DOD and goes into the black projects which the DOD has direct oversight over. So the CIA is kind of like the bagman. It collects the money, it goes to the Department of Defense that actually administers how this money is going to be spent on different black projects. So the size, how much are we talking about? I think the best indication for just how much we're talking about here are the auditing irregularities that the Inspector General of the Department of Defense has himself identified. He identified in 3 years, it was 1998, 1999 and the year 2000. In those 3 years, he identified on average $1.7 trillion could not be accounted for in the Department of Defense budget. In other words, this was money that was being moved around in ways that could not be accounted for. And I think what that indicates is the true size of the black budget. We're looking at an infrastructure that is funded by as much as $1.7 trillion a year. Now, when you consider that the whole Department of Defense budget officially is just over $400 billion, we're talking about a vast infrastructure that is 4 times greater than the entire Department of Defense budget.
As Jack Nicholson would say, you can't handle the truth.
Is it possible that ancient and secret societies exist that have always had the real but hidden information? And have they, as a result of their ongoing familial knowledge, been manipulating and governing virtually all countries down through the centuries? Researchers point to the Illuminati and the power elite and their use of propaganda as carried by the mainstream media. Many believe that these powerful few actually control almost all information by implanting false knowledge and beliefs into our human collective reality.
Essentially everything that you would want to know has been covered up. From the electrogenetic magnificence of your DNA being a spiritual antenna to the Creator, to the most amazing Pythagorean mystery school mathematics that is essentially freeing to humanity, in essence also very, very clear that everything in our world is a divine creation, and as the math is the expressive tool of the Creator for creationism.
The United States government, the leader of the free world, is totally controlled by a wealthy oligarchy. A small handful of people that are just super rich. Most of them are not even in government, but they tell the government what to do. These are the people who are behind the UFO secrecy. They don't care if you know there's ETs out there. But if you know there's ETs out there, then you will know that there is alternative technology. And this could upset their monopolies over energy, fuel, transportation, communications, pharmaceuticals. And that's what they don't want. After all, who would continue to pay all these ever-increasing prices for gasoline that's polluting the air, choking us all, killing our kids? Why would we do that if we knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that there was non-polluting energy sources out there? This is what it's all about. It comes back to the old journalistic adage, follow the money.
Everything has been covered up. The toxicities of the pharmaceuticals. You're not learning the truth about vaccinations. You're not learning the truth about various medications. The pharmaceutical industrialists, which I prefer to call the military, medical, petrochemical, pharmaceutical cartel, essentially has control of the media, the mainstream media, and so it has control over the mass mind. And as a result of those powers that they assert, people are not given factual information upon which to make informed decisions. They're given propaganda, and as a result, the choices that people are making are genocidal. And I say genocidal with a strict definition, meaning the mass killing of people for economic, political, and or ideological reasons. And those pharmaceutical industrialists are intimately connected to those people who wish to control populations. They've published the literature, what their intent is, not only how best to control populations, why populations need to be controlled, but ultimately affecting the technologies that are in place to do just that. Currently, 50% reduction in general of the planet's population that has been targeted for elimination.
The Disclosure Project's oriented towards putting together credible government documents and these witnesses so that there is an undeniable case made that this is real and not fictitious. It started really in early 1990s, and after I had briefed the President Clinton's first CIA director on this problem, it was made very clear to me that the executive branch of the U.S. government did not want to do this because, I'm quoting, the President was concerned he would end up like Jack Kennedy. I'm not kidding. That was said to me by President Clinton's closest friend.
Could it be that much of what we believe is illusion? Is it possible that the history of human civilization is not as we have been told? Have we as people been purposefully dumbed down? And have our governments only served to strengthen the bonds that bind us to our ignorance, not only of our past, but of our present and potential future?
Officials in these agencies no longer represent the best interests of humanity, but are now representing the interests of a particular extraterrestrial race that they have been compromised by. So we pay a heavy price if we don't make this open, if we don't bring in transparency and accountability into this whole process. It means that we don't know whether or not those that are behind the policies are actually implementing these policies for the best interest of humanity, which is what they claim, or for the best interest of a particular extraterrestrial race.
Some of the questions that we must ask include: are there bases on our moon? Are there structures and life forms on Mars and many of the other local planets? Have our governments made deals and treaties with other life forms that affect the future of all of us on planet Earth?
These people will continue zipping through our atmosphere, checking nuclear plants and so forth and so on. They have never been hostile. They pose no air security problems, whatever. The Air Force knows this, and the Air Force has made statements to that effect, that UFOs pose no threat.
They are here. Not just the Greys, but the others who look and act like us. Perhaps they are here to instruct us, to help us safeguard our planet.
Definitely rules and regulations that govern everything. And the councils have the history books of all of the planets and all the records. So when a planet reaches the point that it can support life, that's a very momentous time in the history of that planet. At that time, the planet is given its life charter.
We're dealing with a big, big story. It's not just them. As I said, if it was that simple, it would probably been out some time back. It's really about us. It's who we are, what we are, how we came to be, and where we might end up going sometime.
Life is never allowed to just simply spontaneously develop. That if it did, it would be very chaotic.
If we could integrate, I call it the spiritual, but the esoteric or whatever. I mean true esoteric. I don't mean religion necessarily, because there's a difference, I think, between religion and spirituality.
To produce a thinking, intelligent human being would have taken millions more years if it was happening by normal evolution than it would have taken. And it would still not have got to the point we are now. They create life on other planets because this is the way they were created, by what they call the archaic ones, the ones from the very beginning, have been doing this forever.
Mankind was developed as a species, as a spiritual being, and I think we've gotten so far away from who we really are that it's very hard for us to go back there and digest that maybe we have cosmic brothers and sisters. We fight among ourselves for diversity. I mean, if anybody walks in here and it looks totally different, we fight among ourselves. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what are the ETs that are involved thinking about the way we handle ourselves with people that are so different from us? They're probably scared to death to appear because of what we might do to them. We have not handled diversity very well.
Yeah, one day I would hope that the people of Earth would stand up and extend their hand in friendship to these people. We have never done that here on this planet. You know, we've shot at them. We've done everything. We fire radar, we fire lasers, everything. We need to say hi.
There are other extraterrestrial groups who are human-looking, such as the Pleiadians, the famous Pleiadians of Billy Meyer and others, and they are much more intent on trying to assist humanity to become free of this kind of manipulation from other races that really try to use humanity as a resource.
Let's think about it. You can't say, whoopee star kids, these wonderful advanced children have been transformed by contact from people from the stars, when in the same breath you say there's no such things as UFOs.
The question of UFOs and extraterrestrials, most people just think is something entertaining. In reality, it's something that is central to how we're going to be able to go forward as a civilization, because that issue involves sciences, technologies, energy and propulsion systems that could give us a whole new civilization.
It's terribly important the whole thing come apart, because it's all one package and it's part of our bright and very, I think, hopeful future. And I think of these star kids growing up and being our leaders, our presidents, congresspeople, senators, university professors, leaders in medicine and science and so forth. I think what brilliant and expansive future we're going to have, but we have to get from point A to point B, and this cover-up is just stultifying us in a very painful way.
Is it possible that an intergalactic federation exists, and that this collective of different member beings are in the process of offering the people of Earth membership in a federation of planets? Most importantly for all of us and our children, some of these researchers say that acceptance of their invitation to federation membership would end all war, starvation and dependency upon fossil fuel-based energy systems for our entire planet.
Part of the problem with the UFO cover-up coming apart, you've got to uncover the whole thing at the same time. You can't half uncover. And people who try to only look stupid.
Degli extraterrestri le fanno per noi specialmente.
But they're doing it for us. They are praying for us.
Siamo la categoria più bassa che esiste E allora abbiamo bisogno di preghiere.
We are the lowest of the category in the evolutionary scale.
Gli extraterrestri
He really believes that humanity is the lowest of the category of the evolutionary scale, with all the proof that he gave you of the ecological problem, of the war problem, of the choosing evil problem, and all that. This is his belief system.
We all have a responsibility to find out what the truth is about something like this. And people have to take responsibility for looking into what the truth is. We've put together the means for people to do that. Now people have to take the initiative. And we need all the help we can get. I would ask people to help us network this to anyone in any institution that can help. The reason this is so critical is that we've reached a point in our civilization where for us to go forward as a people, we're going to have to end this kind of illegal secrecy. And we're going to have to allow this information and these technologies to get out and begin to fix many of these large problems.
I've always believed our destiny is in the stars. That's a hope that I have, that generations yet to come will travel out there and will become a part of that community. That's a dream that I won't live to see, but it's a dream I hold dear, that we'll make it, that we will survive as a species, because I think we've got some, as I jokingly say, we have some good friends in high places.